let's not waste time. We'll take this slow. We've got miles behind us, but miles to go. So let's just break this down to the simplest truth. You and I as one will always be better than two.
Welcome to Relaxed and Free, a clinically minded, biblically based counseling podcast. I'm your host, Cary Corley, here with my co-host and friend, Doug Bonebrake. Today, our interview episode, we're going to be asking our guests to answer a question. For season 1, that question is the American church in a mental health crisis? Church being the universal church of God.
Big C church.
Yeah, Big C church. Thank you, Doug.
Church. Yep.
And mental health being, diagnostic and statistically manualed.
Oh, yeah.
Mental health issues, anxiety, depression, that type of thing.
Yeah,
right?
anything you can get diagnosed for.
Yes. So that is the question. Is the American church in a mental health crisis? And when we have our guests on, our chief aim is for them to share their journey of how God has helped them to arrive at the answer to the question. All right. And so it's really kind of set up like a counseling session. We really want them to, and they're prepared to be vulnerable, to be authentic, and to just invite us into the story of their lives. And ultimately, we're going to give God the glory for everything that He's done in their life, and how He has brought peace and freedom into their life and the lives of the people around them. So today, without further ado,
Drum roll, please.
Is a guest who is well known to us, Dr. Lindsay Bonebrake.
Yay.
Who happens to be the wife of Douglas Bonebrake, and also
Which is me.
my co-host and friend. And Lindsay and I worked together at a local nonprofit mental health counseling center in the Kansas City area for
5 years.
5 years, yeah.
Because you were there a year before I was.
Yeah.
And you left last year. So.
And I do not hesitate to say that you're an esteemed colleague. And
thank you.
I am, even though I'm no longer there, I miss you tons.
Well, thanks. We miss you too. A lot.
Oh, thank you very much. So let's get right into it.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you the question. We'll get your answer, and then from there we'll just see how you came to that answer.
Can I be that guy and interject for a second?
Doug, that's why you're here.
2 minutes in, you did it.
2 minutes, I know, but this is kind of important.
That's
I would
why
like
you're here.
to kind of establish some of the credentials of Dr. Lindsay Bonebrake and all of the things that she is doing and has done, so that way she's establishing who she is to the listeners, and they know that she is not just my wife, she's also this powerhouse in the counseling world.
Dude,
Not to overstate
I love that.
it.
No, yeah, you advocate for your wife.
I will.
You do it.
Yeah.
Do it.
So you know what? Tell them, Lindsay.
I'm a licensed professional counselor in Missouri. I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor in Kansas. I'm currently the director of a counseling program in Kansas. And
What is the name of that program?
it is the Master of Arts in Counseling program at Central Baptist Theological Seminary. It's new. It's about 3 years old. And I am in charge of our school partnerships at the office that I currently work at. So that's where my heart is working with kids and also educating future clinicians to go do the Lord's work.
Oh, I love it.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah. You're welcome.
And I'm a play therapist. That's the most fun part of my job.
That's your thing.
That's the fun part.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we
you
were talking
love to
about
do.
before all this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a great conversation.
Yeah. So the question is the American church in a mental health crisis?
I feel like brooding music should play after you say that. So I have I don't know if we'll call this an advantage or a disadvantage, but I've heard your guys' other You're practicing and you're pontificating on this question. So I've overheard other people's answers, which is making it harder for me to answer and making me feel like I'm copying off of someone's paper.
Oh.
So
Yeah, she heard my answer and was like,
No.
"Well, that's it. That's the right answer."
it was not your answer, honey.
we got that recorded. That's what it was.
No. So I will build upon the answer that I heard. I don't think the American church is in a mental health crisis. I think America is in a mental health crisis and the church is in a crisis.
Oh, so it's one, not the other. So the culture, American culture, is in a mental health crisis.
For sure.
And the church, because it's in American culture, is kind of a part of that.
I think the church has its own crisis going on, but I wouldn't say that it's based in mental health. I would say mental health is a symptom of that crisis. But I think the answer that I overheard that I loved was today we're seeing churches with counseling centers, with support groups, with lay leaders learning how to care well for people who aren't either able to afford counseling or don't want to go to counseling. So we're working to equip people to care well for people. I even see churches that have trauma-informed care trainings, different things like that. So I don't think the church is in a mental health crisis, but I think the church has got a whole other set of problems, concerns, issues, and I think that is because it's in America. Our issues in America are so big. Everything's big right now.
Yeah, just in your face. Mm-hmm. So you said that the church has its own host of problems. I want to go in that direction. What problems are you seeing in the church in terms of really, I mean, you don't have to limit it to mental health, but mental health, and maybe you're seeing like theological issues, or
I think
what's your top three?
My top three. I think what I see is a laissez-faire attitude in the church of a lot of people. I go to church to check my Sunday morning box, but then that also gives me the right to judge everyone else. So it's like I've checked my box, and now because I've checked my box, you're doing this thing wrong, you're doing this thing wrong, this thing wrong. And then I think another thing that I see is a lot of intolerance in the church of people who are not believers. So holding non-believers to standards that they shouldn't be held to.
Okay. So heading on to the third one, because
Okay.
I don't want to even.
I don't know if I have a third one.
Oh, okay.
So.
I don't want to flood my own brain. So the first one you said was they're checking a box, and I want to dig into that a little bit because I think data suggests, and our Google guy might be able to help me with this.
Uh-oh.
Maybe he has to Google Barna. I don't know.
Oh, we should introduce. That's Chris. He's on the.
Chris is our Google guy.
Chris is our guy in the chair.
Yeah.
If you've watched.
I'm pretty sure that data.
I know Google.
Thanks.
And data suggests that the American church is shrinking. And so in my mind, I'm like, does that mean people are still checking a box, or do they even care to check a box anymore? Because I
would say, I agree with that, but I would say also that the people that are going, and I wouldn't say this about your church or my church. I know where we've chosen to be engaged.
you can't talk about my church now.
Yeah, I'm not talking about my church. I love my church, but
We're talking about everyone
the
else's
general,
churches.
like,
Well, it's not
yeah,
here.
the general church. It's never going to happen in our
Never
churches.
us.
But I even, speaking of Barna, I was doing a self-care presentation, and I looked up, and it was self-care for people in ministry.
Oh, really?
And the statistics say that, and Chris, you can check this on Barna because I just found it like 2 weeks ago.
What's Barna?
Barna is a
research
polling group. In 2019, it was like 29% of pastors were not well in all. There was like 8 different wellness categories. 29% of pastors were overall not well.
Wow.
Since the pandemic, that number is up to, I think, 39%. And then
You are kidding.
it's 45% for people who are under the age of 45 in ministry. So,
You are kidding.
like,
So
ministers are burning out.
Younger pastors did not handle the pandemic well. It doesn't sound like.
I don't know if I would say that. I would say
I know
younger
correlation
pastors,
doesn't equal causation.
I would say younger pastors probably felt more pressure because they knew how to do all the technology things.
Oh.
So,
okay. Yeah.
and that's just this is just a guess. I would say.
Well, I mean,
younger,
no one's going to hold your feet to the fire here. We're just talking. So.
Yeah.
So Chris, why don't you show?
It's 38% of U.S. pastors have thought about quitting full-time ministry just over the past year.
Wow.
Yeah, that's from 2021.
38%.
That's from Barna.
Of pastors have thought about quitting full-time ministry over how many years?
In the last year.
In the last year.
And when you think about what they have encountered in the last 2 years, how to care well for their parishioners that they couldn't see or they couldn't get to, or their needs shifted entirely. Like in my counseling classes, there was not a pandemic 101. I'm sure in their ministry in their seminary classes, there was not a pandemic 101 class.
Yeah, I don't think anybody had a pandemic 101.
Since the last one was 100 years ago.
Right, yeah.
And I think they had to get really creative. And then I think they got burned out on their creativity so what I experienced, right? You and I worked from home for 8 to 10 weeks, something like that.
Yeah, it was a long time.
And I remember the first day of it, I was gung ho. I was I'm going to figure out how to do all these things for kids online. I'm going to help them. There's going to be no question. I was delusional. I had a 4-month-old. And then
the kids were the hardest ones to do online.
And then all this social media stuff came out. All these people were trying to be so helpful. And they were like, you can try these things and these things. And every day it was a new set of things over and over and over. And I finally had to stop even looking at it because it just made me feel like a terrible therapist every day, because I was like,
oh, really?
I'm lucky if I don't see 7 ceiling fans for 7 hours a day, which doesn't mean therapeutic work wasn't happening. It was. But
Hi, Dr. Lindsay.
Here's
my room.
Yeah, which was so cool. There was a beautiful vulnerability piece to that of I had just come back from maternity leave. A whole bunch of people got to meet my baby that never would have. They got to meet my dog. I got to see their bedroom.
But the 7th session of them showing you their closet,
right. And then I have all these therapists who are posting.
Any therapeutic traction here?
And I have all these therapists who are posting let's do this scavenger hunt, and you can do this, and you can do this, and you can do this. And I'm like,
so relate that to me back for the
day.
pastors.
So I'm guessing something similar was happening over in the ministry world of hey, you guys can do this for your parishioners. You can do that. You can do this. And then,
yeah.
Yes, we can do all those things. And I love brainstorming and I love being creative. But there also comes a point when we're all living a collective trauma and we have no idea what's happening next.
No.
That we have to be I have to be okay with doing the best I can with what I have right now. And if that means that I see a ceiling fan and I get to check in with that kid and we talk and we do a 3-marker challenge or whatever thing that's giving us some sort of connection, I know that's therapeutically beneficial.
Right, yeah.
For pastors, I don't know where that stops because
I don't know where that stops. And then also I would say that pastors, so you have the clients, parents who are on some level they're watching what you do.
Yeah, they've got to at least turn the computer on for me.
You had our clinical director watching what you do. And then you had the rest of us judging you. No, I'm just kidding.
It didn't feel like that all the time. No.
So you have what, an active caseload of how many clients?
At that time, probably, I would probably say between 40, 45, not seeing them all every week.
Not seeing them all every week. But so we could say that most churches are probably not 45
That's
people.
small.
You're right, they're bigger, at least a couple hundred probably is where the average church lands. So, and then you talk about pastors of bigger
mega
churches and mega churches and all of that. That's a lot of people to try and make happy.
Well,
the biggest thing that I heard from, I do primarily marriage counseling, and I have a heart for pastors. So, and they talk to each other. Pastors talk. So I have a lot of pastors and pastors' wives come through my office for marriage counseling. And the number one thing that I heard was just the difficulty of answering a phone call and people being upset that the church wasn't doing enough for COVID, the pandemic, and then hanging up the phone, and then the phone ringing right away, and the other person being upset that they were doing too much.
Well,
and so the pastors were caught in this catch-22. You know, you're darned if you do, you're darned if you don't.
Well,
they couldn't make people happy.
If we think about pre-pandemic, right, we have a pretty solid grasp on our 50 minutes. We have learned to do that, right?
Yeah.
So my session is over at 50 minutes. I have 10 minutes to go to the bathroom, write my notes, whatever. Pastors before the pandemic were on duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Whether right or not, the expectation of the typical parishioner is, if I need my pastor, he will be there.
Yeah.
And then we all go work from home for this chunk of time. And I felt like if anyone needs me at any time, I need to be available because I need to prove that I'm working. Oh. No person ever told me that. No person ever implied that to me.
Just
that was
the little person in your mind.
I'm an Enneagram 1. I'm a perfectionist, and I want to prove to you at all times that I'm working, that I'm doing my job, that I'm doing my best. Again, nobody ever questioned my work ethic, not one person.
And if they ever did, you tell them to talk to me.
Or me.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, the husband is still here.
The guy who was taking care of the baby upstairs. And I had to hear it. It was traumatic, but for all of us. But the pastor, whether they want to have those healthy boundaries or not, and I know I've spent lots of time. I have lots of friends who are pastors. We've spent a lot of time in the therapy office with pastors talking about healthy boundaries, but and those can happen most of the time. But we can't plan for the big crises that they're dealing with, and they're intimately involved in people's lives in a different way than we are. It's similar, but it's also very different. And I think, again, turning off, shutting our computer, any of those things were not happening then. And now we're seeing the results of what that looked like for 2 years. We're seeing, so I think that under 45, to me, that number is because those people, A, knew how to do all the technology pieces, B, felt like they were still in that phase of ministry and life that they were trying to prove themselves, and C, our generation doesn't know how to stop working. So the older pastors were probably like, yeah, I'm done for the week. Like, it's 5, I'm done. I don't want to be on that computer box anymore,
Right, yeah.
I think it was a lot easier for them.
Yeah.
I know there were other things that were way harder for them. I'm not being ageist in any way, but
that was my first thought. She's being ageist right
So
there.
was there fallout? Would you say that there was fallout from those pastors being burnt out? Did you experience fallout yourself from our church?
no, I think,
Really?
I mean, we go to yes. I
What
think
size is your church?
we go to a church plant. I would say now our church probably runs on a average week 75 to 100 adults. Is that correct? You do the counting every
I
week.
do the counting. I can tell you it is averaging around 100, maybe 110 attendance.
Okay.
That's including all children.
Okay.
Each week, probably about 75.
And the question, Doug, was, did you experience...
I mean, and again, we don't necessarily need to talk about it. I'm not trying to air dirty laundry. We went through a lot in those couple of years beyond just the pandemic. And it's been a really interesting journey for me, specifically about getting support and stuff like that. And
Getting support, as I said.
getting support, but also feeling plugged in. And there's a whole bunch. It's, because to me, the church shrinking
Yeah.
isn't necessarily only indicative of some problem with the church. If that makes it could also be indicative of like a problem with connecting in the community, and the fact that the last 2 years, like there are a significant number of people who just won't show up due to a pandemic.
If I understand the data correctly, the shrinking is consistent with age. So baby boomers I can't remember all the percentages. I'm looking at Chris, the Google guy. I think this was also Barna, that baby boomers who...
This episode brought to you.
Right. Excuse me. The baby boomers were pretty high in their percentage. I think around like 50% or so would consider themselves religious and Christian-based faith. And then the greatest generation, which was before them, was higher than that. And then millennials are in the teens. Am I right about that, Chris?
I don't know about the generation.
So you're saying this shrink has to do with the generation, not the per time frame of the...
Correct. Yeah.
I would agree with that.
I can give you statistics, though, on what percentage of each generation were happening per year.
Okay.
What year would you like? 2020? Well, in 2012, the elders is what they're calling them, and boomers were at 43% for the elders and
for church attendance.
For weekly church attendance. So 53% of all elders in that generation in 2012 were attending church weekly, and 44% of boomers. Only 41% Gen X and 36% millennials. In 2020, everybody's down by nearly 20% for everybody.
And that's church attendance. So that makes sense to me, right?
So I would guess boomers and elders, that number would be way higher if we would consider like shut-ins who would be there but couldn't get there.
But if you hang in with me, because I want to make a point here. If you'll look up not church attendance, but look up belief, I think the statement was, if someone believed in the Christian faith, right? Mm-hmm. Believed in God and higher power, Jesus Christ, that type of thing. I think that drastically reduces as it changes. So he's looking that up. But and my point being that I think church declined is because obviously the older generations who had a higher percentage of them who considered themselves Christian are passing away. And the younger generations have much lower percentage who would consider themselves Christian are now taking in the lead positions of the church and stuff like that. And the American church is literally shrinking. So I think it's something, to consider in terms of mental health in the church, because what do we say about anxiety and depression and all those things increasing at the same time as our faith is decreasing? I think that's interesting. I'm not saying, that they have to be connected, but
Well, I think that also plays into my second thing.
So we will get to your second thing. We're going to take a break. And I think so. It's a great time for a break. And we're going to take a break right now. And we're going to come back to the data set of Google Chris and the second point of Dr. Lindsay Bonebrake. And we will be right back. At Lakewood Family Therapy, we aim to be your refuge in the storm. We're professional Christian counselors whose sole purpose is to bring healing to your family and hope for the future. If you'd like a free 15-minute phone consultation with one of our professional counselors, you can call or text 816-663-9751 or head on over to our website, lwfamilytherapy.com. We'd love to hear from you. Lakewood Family Therapy, where faith, family, and future is our number one priority.
Thank you for listening. Join us next week for part 2 of this interview. Relaxed and Free is a presentation of Lakewood Family Therapy. Catch up on other episodes wherever you get your podcasts, and please rate and review. Every review honestly helps us bring you this content. Production and engineering led by Doug Bonebrake. Recording done by Chris Renfro. Stay relaxed and free.
Let's not waste time, we'll take this slow. We've got miles behind us, but miles to go. So let's just break this down to the simplest truth. You and I as one will always be better than two. Yeah, you and I as one will always be better than